This video is about me changing the clutch discs and plates on a 2018 Honda CRF250L. It is not a tutorial video and is my first attempt at voiceover. Other videos have helped me with the actual steps I needed to take. This just showcases my first real mechanical attempt, like first time training oil or coolant. Definitely the first time I'm opening up the engine case on this bike or any bike. You've seen me disconnect the clutch cable using a little wrench, and now I'm draining the oil by removing what I thought was a super tight screw. I ended up replacing the washer just to be safe. I also guessed wrong at the amount of oil that would come out, so my ice cream box was not enough. The quantity of oil in this engine is roughly 1 ice cream box and a quarter for other people attempting this. I dropped the oil bolt and the washer in the box. I had to fish for it later with my fingers, and I did torque the screw properly to 24 Newton meters. Then came the water pump drain bolt, fairly easy job, and note that almost no coolant will come out of it as long as the radiator cap is still on. Taking note of the gunk that had collected around that bolt, which I'm hoping will be expelled as I drain all the coolant. Over on the left side I removed the plastic to make some room, and then I extracted this little safety screw. I probably didn't need to remove it entirely. Then I opened up the radiator cap, which I had never done before actually in the 4 years I've owned this bike, and I let the floodgates open. My wife's surprise voice sounded funny, slightly sped up, so I'm keeping it. I did have to tilt the bike left to right to get all of the liquid out. Then came the reserve coolant. Not sure if it would be easier to just remove one of the hoses, but I was able to flip it upside down and remove almost all of the coolant. I failed to record the removal of the brake pedal. Not as easy a process as other videos out there led me to believe. One key component to remove was this pin connecting the master cylinder to the brake pedal. It's held in place by one of those soft metal security pins that come out if you straighten them and then pull them out with little pliers. There's another safety pin at the back of the pedal behind the frame, strange shape to it. That one comes out easily just by pulling. And mind the washer and the dust seal there, which the manual says has to be put on facing a certain way. Plenty of grease still in there, as I had removed this brake pedal a couple of weeks back. I did not replace any of the rubber seals or safety pins. For the crankcase, I made sure I had enough maneuvering room by moving out of the way the water pump hose, the brake light sensor bracket, and the clutch cable triangle bracket thing. And it was finally time for the removal of the crankcase lid. I did the crisscross pattern first. The bolts I thought were not tight at all, the 8mm bolts, 10 of them plus 2 for the clutch cable housing bracket. One of them is longer, so I made careful note about where each bolt came from. And 2 more bolts for the coolant pipe that also comes with 2 rubber gaskets, don't lose those. The side cover came off easily enough. It was held in place slightly by the gasket, which got torn in the process. Some extra oil will spill out of the bottom of it, I guess. And there it is, the inside of the engine, the guts with gears and other things. And there's the clutch basket with a brown plate, lifter plate, is it? Not sure why it was so brown. I didn't notice that in any other videos I watched. Took out the bottom screen filter wedge and fished out 2 bits of string-like, maybe silicone residue. Not much else in there, fairly easy to clean. And then I removed the gasket from both the cover and the main body. I used a sharp blade and a small piece of wood, and I was careful not to drop anything inside the engine. Then it was on to removing the 5 clutch bolts that hold the pressure plates in place. I called this one a lifter plate earlier, not sure where I heard that. Anyway, the brown plate. Not much torque to these bolts either, very easy to take out, except that they're fairly long, so maybe use an electric screwdriver or something. I initially loosened them in a star-shaped pattern, and I will be replacing both bolts and springs with new OEM ones. The rest of the process is pretty straightforward. Pull the pressure plate by the center pin and you should see the friction discs and steel plates stacked up inside. I'll slow down the video a bit for a quick inspection of the state of the discs and plates. There's also some valuable info in the dialogue between me and my wife, so I'll let you hear all of it. That's Romanian, by the way. Right, so left-hand side we have a closer look at the discs and plates. OEM parts, stock, 25,000 kilometers on them. And in the background we have the process of removing the last bits, the judder spring and the spring seat. The seat, the very last one, can be annoyingly difficult to get out. You don't need to use force, it's just the oil keeping it stuck to the back wall. I was a bit surprised to find this sticky black residue stuck to the basket. I'm guessing that's from the burnt up friction discs. This is how I managed to keep bolts organized using some cardboard. Brand new friction discs and steel plates, as I mentioned, plus spring seat and judder spring. I'm keeping those in there. I know some people like to take them out. I see no reason for it right now. Installation is in the reverse order of removal, as the manual often mentions. I did use the manual a lot. I had it by my side, PDF format on my iPad, and I went back to it for like torque values and other stuff. I did not soak the discs in oil. I just dipped them in the old oil before putting them in. Not sure you're supposed to lubricate the steel plates as well. It all seems a bit strange to me, given that it's all gonna get soaked in oil anyway, but maybe there's a reason for this I'm just not seeing. And so far this has been less anxiety inducing than I would have expected. I did feel like a heart surgeon at some points. I'm sure I was overly paranoid about some things and probably careless about others. Heart surgery, is the clutch the heart of a motorcycle? No, it's the piston or the battery. No, it's the fuel tank, because that's where fluids come. Well, not all fluids, no. Yep. And finally the pressure plate with new springs and new bolts. My old bolts actually look perfect. I'm keeping those. The old springs seem fine, but they look very, very black. I'm keeping them, but I'm probably not going to reuse them ever. I did take a look at the bearing in the center. It sort of seemed fine to me, so I'm not touching it. You'll notice I'm using some blue glue on the threads of the bolts. I remember seeing someone doing it on YouTube. I figured a drop wouldn't hurt. I torqued the bolts by hand rather lightly. And again, these are long bolts. An electric drill, screwdriver, something would help. And the crankcase gasket, new one, of course. I don't remember why I decided to oil it up. I think it's because I wanted it to stay stuck to the edge of the case and not move around. It went on smoothly. No problems with the crankcase cover either. I stopped to clean up the coolant hole there. It actually leaked a bit from there. You'll see that later on in the video. Honda does recommend replacing those two O-rings, but I forgot to order them and they looked good enough. There's a cog wheel towards the front that I think connects to something in the water pump. I carelessly spun it a bit and now I had to adjust it so it would go in correctly. And it's time for the final test. I'll admit to being a bit nervous at this point. And it works. There's coolant in the radiator, by the way, and I did put everything back in the way it was: coolant pipe and hose, a brake pedal and clutch cable and everything. The manual says to leave the engine running for 2 to 3 minutes, that's why I'm checking out my watch. And that's me noticing something's dripping. I thought about tasting it for just a split second. It didn't smell of anything anyway, but it wasn't oily, so I figured out it must be coolant. And we hunt for the leak for a while until we identify the culprit. It's the small metal coolant pipe. Remember the one whose O-rings we were supposed to replace? We left the engine running for 2 minutes, blipped the throttle a couple of times, air bubbles came up, and we are now refilling the radiator. 50-50 distilled water and coolant mix. I decided to leave that audio exchange in there for everyone to enjoy. I haven't yet fixed the leak, but it is down to like a few drops per hour now. I'll probably need to replace the O-rings. And that was it. Now for a test drive and some music I made.